Hello everyone. I know it's been a long time since I've made a video. There's many reasons for that, but the main reason is because I've been pretty busy. It's high season here in Florida, so I kind of have to do a lot of firings, at least one glaze firing a week, and there's just not enough time to, make a video, upload a video, edit a video, all that stuff. So I just wanted to talk about some things that are kind of, things that potters have to deal with. So I did a glaze firing last night. It's just about cooled down to where I can unload it, but it's still pretty hot, so I'm not going to unload it. But the thing I want to talk about is, kiln maintenance is not really a fun thing to have to deal with. And, speaking for myself, I'm not really that good at it. Anything mechanical or, electronic, which this kiln is. But all potters have to deal with some type of kiln maintenance. And if you're using an electric kiln, as we do, the elements is one thing that is an issue. And I have changed kiln elements before. I had a manual kiln. It was easy to do. It's sort of hard to find older kiln elements. So if you can see my elements right here, they're new because I just put them in last week. Let me show you. We'll go over here. We're in the shed, in the kiln shed, so it's kind of a messy area. This is what I took out. So these are the old original elements. We'll talk about this in a minute. Move this over. The old original elements that, I had the kiln now for probably close to 2 years. I think it's probably not quite 2 years. I think I got it in May of 2016. So I've done about 160 firings with these original elements. So that's a bisque and a glaze together. So, if you divide it in half, that's how many glaze firings I've done. So here's the thing about this. So these old elements, they look like this, and you know how they get. Once they start aging, they kind of get like an ashy gray, and they lay flat. They weren't all as flat as this, but as an example, when you see this happening, and there are other things that happen to your glaze firing, if you're doing, mid-range, cone 5 and up, I don't know about high fire. I'm sure it's a much less lifespan of your elements than if you're doing mid-range. But so 5 or 6. The thing about what I learned doing this is your glazes change when your firings take a longer time. So I hope I explained this well, but usually my glaze firings were taking anywhere from 8 to 10 hours normally. That's what I could depend on. So as these elements aged, the thing is, it kind of like rapidly turned into these really long firings that I didn't think it would happen so quickly, but when these elements age, they really changed the firing to where they were taking like 16 hours or more to do a glaze. So what that meant, and I really didn't even understand what that meant until I really thought about it and looked at what was happening, is like this is an example. This was in the kiln as a test with these elements in a firing that took like 16 hours. This is what is normally my most popular blue glaze. It's a commercial glaze made by Standard Ceramic called Mediterranean Mist. Now this is like an easy glaze. You mix it, it's just, even if you don't get the hydrometer reading correct, it still comes out blue, it doesn't run, it goes on quick, it dries fast. I mean, it's an easy glaze. I've never had any problems. So all of a sudden, when these firings got long, as you can see, it's brownish. The blue is not very vibrant. And the main problem were these little crater pock marks that I was getting. This was happening on other blue glazes as well. My automatic light just turned off. There we go. that was pretty weird and a really big problem because everybody loves Mediterranean mist. I sell tons of stuff with this on it. It's one of the few commercial glazes that I'm still using. Sometimes when you get these sort of surface craters, whatever they're called, I don't think it's pinholing because sometimes it will be sharp, and when you run your hand over it, actually is really sharp, like a little crater. It almost sounds like plastic, sometimes like when you run your hand over it. I've had this happen in the past, and I didn't understand what this was. So what I have figured out, and there's some actually major ones, it was happening mostly on the rims of the pots, which is the worst place for it to happen because, you know, completely, you can kind of hear it. So that was really bad, and it was happening on almost all of the pots with Med Mist and some of the other blue glazes that I had. And I thought, okay, so it isn't the glaze because, of course, I just mixed up a new batch of it before this started happening. So I thought, okay, is it the batch of glaze? No, it wasn't, because other blue glazes and some of the green glazes were getting this. What I figured out is when your kiln elements get like this and they are working very inefficiently, the manual will tell you that your electric doesn't travel through the elements normally. It jumps when they touch like this. So I guess it like jumps and becomes very inefficient. Causes the glaze, the firing to take longer, and what it is, it's the heat work. You're having much more heat work on your pots because, you know, of course it'll take a long time in the bottom part of the firing, but once it ramps up and gets up into, you know, the mature firing range, let's say from 2,000 degrees up, it was taking like 4 or 5 hours to go from 2,000 to, you know, it was hitting, I was doing a cone 6, but it was only hitting like 2180. So it was taking like 4 or 5 hours to go up not even 200 degrees. So what that's sort of like soaking your kiln for 5 hours. And that's a ton of heat work on your pots. And it's cooking the glaze out and causing it to, I guess, just like boil and bubble right on the surface is the only thing I could figure. So this was kind of like a mystery in the beginning because, you know, this happened so quickly. It went from like normal firings, and I think about 2 months time I was into like a 16-hour firing. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who's having weird glaze problems. Look at your kiln elements first because, you know, like I said, this wasn't even 2 years, so I thought I would get a longer time out of the elements. But today I am a happy potter because with the new elements, and you know, the element thing is another story because to put these elements in, they tell you it's easy, but it was way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So, you know, just plan on it being a little difficult if you have an electric kiln that has, you know, the computer on it and all that. It was not a simple thing like they probably want you to think it is, but you can do it. Take your time, read the manual, and you can put the elements in. I have 6 elements I had to do. This whole thing had to come off. That's the whole thing. I was going to record it, but I just couldn't do both. I had to put the elements in. So let me get that test tile. This sort of ugly brown test tile. It's a little bit blue. That's the same glaze right there. So now we have, if you can see, there we go. These are the same. And sometimes this was even turning green on me, this Med Mist. That's what it's supposed to look like, for sure. So I am back to an 8.5 hour firing, which is great because that's what it should be. And I'm going to cone 5 and holding it for 10 minutes. That sort of is just making all the glazes happy. So would rather have all of them be good than go to cone 6 and have some of them be a little bit overfired. You can see, you know, the kiln's still hot, so I'm not really gonna unload anything, but the witness cone, that is a cone 6 witness cone that is just started to move. Probably when I get down into the middle, it'll be bent over a little bit, but I'm happy with that. I'm going to call that, you know, like cone 5.5. That's really what I should be doing for the glazes And the clay, because the clay is a cone 6 clay, and you know, if you get up there too hot, you start getting into the glazes looking a little too toasty. And anytime, you know, when I first got the kiln and the elements were new, I did a cone 6 and it just fried everything. So I did want to pull back and do a cone, you know, like 5.5, even though it's a 5, but when you hold it for 10, that heat work gives you like a 5.5. So I'm very happy now to have the blue back, and you can see that is also the same blue glaze right there. That's standard ceramic Mediterranean mist. So most of my other glazes I've been making, and I wasn't even sure that they were going to come out the same, because now that the kiln elements are new, sometimes you get into the issue of your glazes looking a little different. So hopefully the lighting is good. It looks good through the camera. I'm just in the shed, so it's not the best lighting, but we're going to try to work with this. So I did a ton of testing this time because I've been making glaze from scratch, and it's a lot less scary than you would think. So I'm not going to go into how to make the glaze or anything like that, but I'll just tell you the names of them, and you can, you know, easily look them up. There's a lot of good sources for glazes, and I'll do a whole separate video for glaze making and sources and books and you know, recipes and all that. But also have a new type of clay in here. This is a clay by Kentucky Mud Works called White Lightning Porcelain. I'm almost out of my regular porcelain, so I wanted to try something else, because the porcelain I have I like a lot, but it's kind of hard to get unless I do a big order of it. And this Clay King is now carrying some of the Kentucky Mud Works products, so you know, it's sort of easy just to order a bag of porcelain, because I only use it for real small things and occasional, you know, garden pieces. And I have to say, this is an absolutely beautiful porcelain. It's not really focusing too well there. It's very white. It's called Glassy at cone 6. This was not quite cone 6, but it is very smooth and nice looking. So this is one of my regular glazes that I've made. This glaze is called J Blue. You probably could find that on Pinterest. I think I found it on Pinterest as a link. It's an awesome cobalt. It's kind of like a blue celadon. It's totally infallible. Cone 5 or 6. Awesome. I use it on my light buff stoneware, which is this, and on porcelain. On porcelain, of course, it looks really good. It's like vibrant, and just customers love it. I also just made for the first time a glaze that, you know, you might say, okay, brown glaze, but I need like a sandy brown to kind of complement the blue, because I do a lot of beachy colors. So I've been looking forever. So of course the glaze that I want to make is slightly difficult, because this is an Alberta slip glaze. I got this out of John Britt's book. I believe, what's it called? It has a really weird name. GA6-A. So I'll probably be renaming that just for my glaze bucket, because I'm not going to be saying GA6-A. But this is a super simple glaze as far as ingredients, but you have to calcine your Alberta slip. So what that is you actually have to put some of your Alberta slip in the kiln and take it up to like 1,000 degrees. There's information online how to calcine. And you only use like half of your calcined clay to your regular. So let's take a look at these bags here. These are my 2 bags of Alberta slip. This is what it looks like raw when you get it. It's like a dark brown. And I calcined some of it, not half of it, but then it turns into sort of like a terracotta color. So it takes out the plasticity of the clay itself, I guess, is what it does. And the reason you do that is because if you didn't do that, your glaze would just sort of peel off of your bisque. And I do have that happening in some of my other Alberta slip glazes that I've made, which will, on another video, I'll show some of those. They don't peel off really badly, but I guess this one would, because this is just these 2 types of, you know, it's the same slip, but 2 different versions of it. It's this, silica, and bentonite. That's the total recipe for this sort of greenish, brownish. It's kind of like a nice warm sandy color, and that's exactly what I was looking for. And you can see on the White Lightning porcelain how nice it breaks on the texture, which is exactly what I was hoping for. So, you know, because you can do like pieces that have words on it and the words will show up. It's very hard to find a lot of glazes that would do that. So that is a total winner. It was really easy to do, to calcine the clay. I did a whole bunch of tests on top of, so this is the Mediterranean Mist. See how nice and blue that is. It's over top of the GA6-A or whatever the heck it's called, the Alberta slip glaze. So that is what I needed, was to be able to combine the blue and the brown together to kind of get a beachy effect. So that's exactly what I wanted. Some of the tests didn't come out that good. The J blue over top of the brown, not so good. That's the J blue by itself on porcelain. So I make another glaze called Juicy Turquoise, which people love. The combination of Med Mist and Juicy Turquoise is pretty much my top seller. This glaze is awesome as well. It's always coming out a beautiful, you know, shiny, glossy turquoise. And this is White Lightning. I just had to make sure that the White Lightning porcelain was compatible with my glazes before I decided to order, because a bag of this delivered, the total cost of the White Lightning when you order, it's going to be like $44 a bag. So 25 pounds for $44. That's very expensive, but at the same time I don't use that much of it. So, but it's very, very smooth and nice. I do like it a lot. And it's a little bit whiter than my regular porcelain. So here's a glaze that I've been testing like crazy, because I think it was a kiln element issue. I was getting a lot of you know, surface problems. It kind of looks just a little bit of an issue still. You know, you get a little bit of pinholing sometimes with green glazes. This is called Chun Seafoam. This is out of John Britt's book. You might be able to find it online. Another website or something might have it, called Chun Seafoam. So it is a really beautiful green, slightly of blue green. It does tend to go well with other glazes, so that's a plus. And this is what it looks like on White Lightning. It does cover the words, you know, the letters, unlike the other glazes, but it does break very heavily on texture, so I do like that. That is a glaze I would really like to use, as long as I can make sure that the pinholing issue doesn't really become a major problem. You can see there. But I think it would be a great one for mugs. This was just another one of those tests. I wanted to make sure that this didn't run. In John Britt's book, it looked like this glaze runs, but it didn't for me, because I probably mixed it a little bit thinner than what most people might do. Alright, so I have also tested another recipe. It looks blue through the camera. That's the trouble with these purples. This is a very purple glaze, though. Let me go into the sunlight here. I don't know if that helps much. I don't know what it is with these purple glazes. They always look blue on the camera. But I can guarantee you it is more of a royal purple color. And, you know, purple glazes, I don't know why they're usually a satin or a matte, but they usually come out that way. This has cobalt oxide in it. It's called Pike's Purple. And I really would like to have a glossy purple, but, you know, I have one that has a stain in it that's a commercial glaze, but that really looks blue to the camera. But it is a great purple. The test is very good. I think I probably will make this glaze, because I think it would sell pretty well for mugs. And then I tested clear on the new White Lightning porcelain with some underglazes, and that worked. So that was very important to test, because the White Lightning porcelain, unlike my high water clay porcelain, which is called P5, some of that is in the kiln. The last of it that I used. The P5 porcelain shrinks at like 10%, maybe like 11%, whereas this, I think it shrinks at like 14%. So that's something that you have to worry about because your glazes might not be compatible, but they look great actually. Nothing has any problems. There's no crazing whatsoever going on here. And then I had some tests for I have a black glaze which I can't decide whether I want to use or not, and I tested some glazes and nothing really looks good over that. So the other thing I did recently, because a lot of potters seem to be doing it and it kind of encouraged me, is a luster glaze. When you do a luster glaze, you have to fire your pieces for a third time. So gold luster, this is fine gold luster by Duncan. I get most of my smaller supplies like that from Clay King, so whatever they have is what I usually end up doing. Although Axner pottery is pretty good too. So the Duncan luster glazes, a lot of potters use them, so I was pretty confident with it. It wasn't the easiest thing to do because you brush it on and you do get a lot of brush marks. It may or may not focus on that. It's not horrible, you know, to have these sort of small imperfections because I think it helps in a way. You know, so people know that it is a handmade item. It's not, you know, totally perfect, and it's never going to be. But it's interesting to do this. I think, you know, you have some plain pots, and this was just white, so I thought it would be an interesting experiment. And I did a few pieces, anyways, like this. So that is something I may continue doing. I'm not that sure. I probably will definitely use the luster glaze because I bought one and they cost like $40 for 2 grams, and because it's real gold, and this was the fine gold. So interesting to add a little pop of color, a bling to your pots if you want to once in a while. I wouldn't do this that often. So for now, that is it. I definitely wanted to talk about the kiln element thing because you know, you do have to really monitor this kind of stuff. I probably should have changed it sooner than I did. Once they lay flat like that, I think once that happens again, I'll definitely be changing the kiln elements as soon as I see them like this. I'm not even going to wait until the firing takes, you know, 13 hours, 16 hours, whatever, because it's not worth it. I've had so much pottery come out bad. People have ordered blue, you know, glazed pots, and it was coming out all brown and just muddy and ugly with the craters on, so it's not worth it in the long run to wait. And the other thing I had to do was change all my thermocouples, so everything kind of at the same time. Thermocouples was about a month ago it started. They'll fail. You'll get a fail message right there, and it'll say like TC1 fail. So the other thing is knowing which one is 1 and which one is 3. 2 is obvious because if you have a 3-zone kiln, 2 is the middle. So I've already forgot. I think 1 is the bottom one. You have to look. It does tell you in the manual. It says like 1 is always the bottom, I think. And look that up because I can't remember. But you know, kiln maintenance is definitely something that we have to deal with, and when we do, we get good results. So that's all for me, and I'll try to do some glaze videos of, you know, making glazes, because pretty much, yeah, everything right there are all glazes that I made. So, you know, it is definitely worth making your glazes, and I'll get into that in a later video. Thank you for watching.